Awesome. That's good. That's good to know. Kay, you mentioned you've been to many countries as an army veteran, and I guess so. Why Kenya? Of other countries, why Kenya?
Everybody asked me that. Yeah. So out of the 45 countries that I went to outside of the military, I did more
Yeah.
traveling outside of the military than I did inside the military. But
Mhm.
Kenya wasn't the first African country I went to. I actually went to Ethiopia first. And
Mhm.
I loved Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the mother, if not one of the oldest countries in Africa with the history, right? Um,
Yes.
but when I landed in Mombasa in 2011 at Moi International Airport, I was like, hold up. This is it for me. We have been
Yeah.
lied to, bamboozled, and hoodwinked. And
Yeah.
so I started going to Kenya before there was this trend everybody
Mhm.
has going on YouTube now. Go to Kenya, go to Kenya. I was going to
Yeah.
Kenya before it was a trend and people were calling me crazy. Like, why are you going to
Yeah.
Africa? Why are you going to Africa? Well, the reason why I fell in love with Kenya is the people.
No.
The first day that I landed, we get off of the flight. It was 1 a.m. I think I flew with Ethiopia Airlines. We were greeted by my adopted family. Shout out to James Mlawasi and his family from
Mhm.
Mombasa, Bamboo. And
Yeah.
we went straight from the airport to Bob's Place.
Yeah.
Any Kenyans that know Niali area and
Yeah.
know Mombasa back in the day, they know Bob's Place was the spot to go to
Yeah.
party. And when I went there, all the Kenyans just greeted me and was like, "Welcome, you home." And that was it. I fell in love with Kenya because of the people.
Are they the ones who gave you the name Wakesho? I'm just asking.
Yes, my adopted family, my see
Mhm.
his father is Taita and his mother
Yeah.
is Lua. And we met in Afghanistan actually in 2011. And he is the
Oh.
reason why I went to Kenya. I had never met a Kenyan a day in my life in the
Yeah.
States. And in fact, before this, I didn't know where Kenya was at on the map. I couldn't tell you if it was East Africa, West Africa. You hear about it when you're in the States, but you
Yeah.
don't really know, right? You
Yeah.
hear about Swahili, but you don't know what that is. You hear
Yeah.
about all these things until I
Yeah.
met my first Kenyan. That's when I
Yeah.
really was introduced, and he was so cool. He
Yeah.
was the reason why I got a better job in Afghanistan. He helped me get a better job in Afghanistan,
Oh.
and we immediately clicked, and he became my brother. And so he was telling me about Kenya, and I was like, "Man, I want to go to Africa. I want to go to Kenya." He was like, "Yeah, okay." So
Yeah.
I went ahead and bought my ticket, and
Yes.
2 weeks later, I came back to him. I said, "We going to Kenya." He was like, "What?"
Yeah.
He was like, "You bought a ticket?" I was like, "Yeah, I bought my ticket. So let's go." And when we got there, the first trip, he named myself and my best friend at the time. They
Yeah.
gave us our names. And so the mother named me Wakesho Akini. So a Taita and a Lua name. But here's the
Yeah.
irony of this.
Uh-huh.
9 years later, after me going to Kenya for 9 years,
Yes.
my family did our DNA. We
Oh.
came back, watch this, 27.7% Kenyan and of the Lua tribe. So I'm
What?
actually Lua. Yeah, it's crazy.
So let me ask this occasion. Now that you're talking about culture and you coming as an African American,
Yes.
how would you relate it, the culture shocks? Because I do have to, there must have been some culture shocks. And for
Yes.
even the other Americans, African Americans who are coming in, what are some of the culture shocks that probably someone should be prepared for?
Right. So as you may know, we've been bringing African Americans to Kenya since
Yeah,
2018,
yeah.
and we brought well over 200 African Americans in the last
Whoa.
6 years, and we've relocated about 25 people to Kenya since 2022.
Yeah,
Just this year, we relocated 4 new families to Kenya from May until now.
yeah,
And so, what I saw my
yeah.
first trip
Mhm.
was everybody was black. You know, in America, the majorities are Mzungus, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
so when you go to a country where everyone is Black, and not because everybody was Black, but everybody in charge was Black. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody that's
Yeah.
on the TV is Black. The
Yeah.
police officer is Black. The president is
Yeah.
Black. The healthcare system is Black. The cartoons on the TV is Black. That you don't realize how embedded racial tension is here in the United States until you go to a country like Kenya and everyone is the same, and you're not. You don't stick out like a sore thumb. Nobody is staring at you. Everyone assumes you're Kenyan, even when you speak, because Kenyans have a large diaspora. They just think that you're a part of the diaspora and you're visiting home. But nobody would think that I'm African American until I have to completely say 2 or 3 times, no, I am actually from America, born and raised. My entire lineage is American. Yeah.
So for the Black American family, probably in the States, who are thinking about coming to Africa, they're interested in coming to Africa. They haven't made that jump. What did you tell them? Because I can imagine the sort of images they have around Kenya and Africa in general. But what would be the advice to them? What did you tell them? And probably what are the issues they're facing them? They're making them not make the jump.
Right. So one of the things that we saw was education, just educating people around what Africa as a whole. One, most African Americans kind of group Africa as one country, and it's not. It's an entire continent of 54 countries, and so many different dialects, so many cultural differences, so many tribes. Just Kenya alone has 44 tribes, of which 43 of the tribes are African tribes, excluding the Asian community that just became the 44th tribe a few years ago. And so with me going to Kenya, the first thing that I wanted to do was integrate into the culture without losing my culture, though, right? Because what happens to happen for African Americans, we're always trying to find our way, because we still seem like a lost people. But what we tend to forget is that we've cultivated our own culture on this land. We have so much to offer to what I like to call our cousins. We're more like distant cousins, not sisters and brothers, because there's more like a 700 gap between you and I, right? And the education around what the continent really is, how modern it is, how progressive it is, how rich in culture it is. That's the first thing that I wanted to do. And that's why I started my first company, World Views.